Chapter 23, Success Through Effective Communication and Human Relations Skills. We begin our study of Chapter 23 by establishing a fundamental truth about your career in sterile processing. You might believe that your job is entirely about the instruments, focused solely on technical tasks like inspecting scissors, assembling trays, or operating sterilizers. However, those technical skills are only half of the sterile processing technician's responsibility. The other half is the ability to work effectively with people. A technician who is technically brilliant but cannot communicate with the operating room staff or get along with coworkers will struggle to succeed. The goal of this chapter is to help you develop professional behaviors that enhance teamwork, reduce errors caused by miscommunication, and improve the overall work environment. Let us examine the need for effective communication and human relations skills. The primary driver for excellent communication is always patient safety. Miscommunication is a leading cause of medical errors in the healthcare industry. For example, if a technician does not clearly understand a specific request from the operating room and sends the wrong instrument tray, the surgery could be delayed, or the patient could be harmed. The second reason is efficiency. Clear communication prevents rework. If instructions are clear and understood the first time, the job is done correctly immediately, saving valuable time and department resources. Now, we move to communication basics. We define communication as the process of transmitting information and understanding from one person to another by the use of words and nonverbal expressions, such as body language. This process works through what we call the communication loop. It starts with the sender, the person initiating the message, and goes to the receiver, the person getting the message. However, the most critical term for your workbook and certification exam here is feedback. Feedback is the step in the communication loop that occurs when the listener asks a question, repeats information, or otherwise helps the speaker know if the message has been correctly received. Without feedback, the sender cannot be sure the message was understood. In our field, closing the loop, for example, repeating back a phone order for a specific loaner tray, is essential for safety. Be aware for the exam that simply asking a question is considered a form of feedback because it proves the listener is processing the information. Within the realm of communication basics, we must address basic speaking skills. Effective speaking in sterile processing requires clarity and precision. When you are the sender of a message, you must ensure your tone is professional and your volume is appropriate for the noisy environment of the decontamination or sterilization area. You must avoid ambiguity. Instead of saying, "Put that over there," you should say, "Please place the heavy orthopedic tray on the bottom shelf of the cooling rack." Precise speaking reduces the need for guessing and minimizes safety hazards. Next, we distinguish between hearing and listening under basic listening skills. The workbook makes a specific and important distinction here. Hearing is a physical function where your ears perceive sound waves. Listening is a mental function where your brain processes the meaning of those sounds. You can hear a sterilizer alarm beeping in the background, but you must listen to understand that it signals a cycle failure that requires immediate attention. Effective listening requires focus and the intentional effort to understand the sender's message. Finally, for this section, let us look at the types of communication. Verbal communication consists of spoken words. Nonverbal communication involves body language, such as crossing arms, rolling eyes, facial expressions, or even posture. Here is a critical concept for your exam. Nonverbal communication often conveys the true feeling behind a message more accurately than the spoken words. If a person's words and body language contradict each other, the receiver usually believes the body language. For instance, if a coworker says they are happy to help you but they are sighing loudly and avoiding eye contact, their nonverbal cues tell the true story. Continuing our study, we move to common communication barriers. Workbook questions often ask you to identify exactly what is preventing a message from being understood, so pay close attention to these categories. The first barrier is jargon. Jargon refers to using specialized words or phrases known only by persons working in a specific position. In sterile processing, examples include terms like flash it for immediate use steam sterilization, or bioburden for the level of microbial contamination. The risk here is that new employees or staff from other departments, such as environmental services, may not understand these terms. This confusion can lead to errors. For instance, asking a cleaner to handle a bioburden hazard without explaining what it is could compromise their safety. The second barrier is attitude. Attitude is defined as emotions that cause a person to react to people or situations in a predetermined way. A negative or defensive attitude shuts down communication before it even begins. You should remember the phrase, a positive attitude is contagious, so is a negative one. Your mood directly impacts the team's performance. If you approach a conversation with anger or defensiveness, the receiver will stop listening to your words and focus only on your hostility. Another barrier you must know for the exam is the halo effect. This is a communication barrier where a person favors another person's opinion solely because of a positive general impression of that person. For example, you might agree with an idea just because the star employee suggested it, rather than evaluating the idea itself. In a safety-critical environment like ours, this is dangerous. Even the most experienced technician can make a mistake, and you must evaluate the message, not just the messenger. The final group of barriers involves physical and environmental factors. Noise is a major issue in our department. Sterilizers hissing, cart washers running, or loud music can physically prevent a message from being heard. Distractions are also critical barriers. This includes multitasking or looking at a phone while someone is talking. To communicate effectively, you must minimize these physical barriers by moving to a quieter area or giving the speaker your undivided attention. Having established the standards for professional behavior and communication barriers, we now turn our attention to human relations and teamwork. In the sterile processing department, you never work in isolation. We define teamwork as a group of people working together to achieve a common goal. In our field, that goal is always patient safety. This collaboration creates a powerful force known as synergy. Synergy is the idea that the team can achieve more together than the sum of its individual members working alone. For example, when decontamination staff and assembly staff communicate effectively about workflow, the entire department produces trays faster and more accurately than if each person focused only on their individual tasks. For the exam, you need to understand the difference between the two types of groups found in the workplace. First, there are formal groups. These are established by management to perform specific tasks. Examples include the safety committee, the night shift team, or the infection control task force. These groups have clear leaders and defined objectives. Second, there are informal groups. These form naturally among employees based on shared interests, such as a group that eats lunch together or carpools. Be aware of the impact of informal groups. They often manage the grapevine, which is the network of gossip and rumors. While these groups provide social support, they can also significantly influence the department's culture either positively or negatively depending on the accuracy of the information they share. Within the context of groups, we must briefly discuss teamwork and decision-making. A key concept here is consensus. Consensus does not mean that every team member agrees 100% with a decision, but it means that every member has been heard and agrees to support the group's final decision. Achieving consensus is vital for maintaining department morale and unity. A vital component of successful teamwork is cooperation. In the context of your workbook, cooperation is specifically defined as the willingness to help others without being asked. It implies taking initiative. If you see a coworker struggling with a heavy case cart or falling behind on assembly, helping them immediately rather than waiting for a supervisor to order you to help is the essence of cooperation. This leads us to the topic of sterile processing and diversity. The SP environment is typically highly diverse regarding age, culture, race, religion, and educational background. You will work with surgeons, nurses, vendors, and technicians from all walks of life. The professional requirement here is clear. Professionalism dictates respecting these differences. Personal biases must never interfere with work relationships or patient care. A diverse team brings different perspectives that can often lead to better problem-solving and innovation within the department. Finally, we must apply these human relations skills to customer service. You must understand who your customer is. In the sterile processing department, our primary internal customers are the operating room personnel and the doctors. Even though we are internal colleagues employed by the same hospital, we must treat them with the same level of service a business offers a paying client. This introduces a vital concept called service recovery. Service recovery is defined as the sequence of steps used to address customer complaints and problems that yields a win-win situation. When an error occurs, such as a missing instrument in a tray, your strategy must be to focus on the solution, not the blame. Blaming the night shift or the transport team erodes trust. Instead, taking ownership to resolve the issue immediately builds confidence in the department's reliability. Building on the concept of service recovery, we must master the specific process for handling complaints. When a nurse or surgeon calls the department in frustration, follow this 4-step process to de-escalate the situation. First, do not take it personally. Complaints are usually about a process failure or a missing product, not an attack on you as a person. Second, listen to the complaint fully without interrupting. Often, the customer simply needs to vent their frustration before they can hear a solution. Third, investigate the facts. Do not just assume an error was made or guess what happened. Check your computer tracking system or sterilization logs to see exactly where the item is. Fourth, and most importantly, follow up with the customer. Call them back to confirm the issue was resolved. This closes the loop and proves that you care about the outcome. Closely related to handling complaints is the skill of setting priorities. In a busy department, you may receive multiple urgent requests at once. You cannot simply guess which patient needs the item most. You must communicate directly with the operating room or your supervisor to determine which item takes priority. Effective customer service involves managing these priorities transparently to ensure patient safety. A specific scenario regarding workplace conflict that you must manage is shift rivalries, most commonly the tension between day shift and night shift. The professional approach is to avoid blaming other shifts for problems. This falls under the concept of avoiding workgroup comparisons. Comparing your team to others or one shift to another negatively affects morale. Statements like, "the night shift must have forgotten it," only damage the reputation of the entire department. Management must foster a one-team mentality to eliminate this counterproductive behavior, as every shift relies on the work of the others to succeed. Beyond daily operations, we must discuss committing to patient care during disasters. In the event of a mass casualty incident or external disaster, the standard rules of scheduling no longer apply. Sterile processing staff are essential personnel. You may be required to work extended hours or stay overnight at the facility to ensure the operating room has enough supplies to treat victims. The ethical principle here is simple. The needs of the community and the patients take priority over personal convenience. You are part of the critical infrastructure of healthcare, and your dedication during a crisis saves lives. Finally, we address a critical administrative rule regarding communication with the media. During disasters or high-profile hospital events, reporters may try to contact staff members for inside information. The rule is absolute. Sterile processing technicians are not authorized to speak to the news media regarding hospital events, disasters, or patients. If you are approached by reporters, you must politely decline and refer them to the hospital's public relations or marketing department. Speaking out of turn can violate patient privacy laws and lead to severe legal and professional consequences for both you and the facility. Before we address social media, we must briefly mention email etiquette. In a modern healthcare facility, email is a formal communication tool. When sending emails, always ensure the subject line clearly states the purpose of the message. Keep your message brief and professional. Avoid writing in all capital letters, as this is interpreted as shouting at the receiver. Most importantly, remember that email is a permanent record. Never write anything in an email that you would not want read aloud in a public setting. We have reached the final and perhaps most modern section of this chapter, which covers social media and HIPAA. This is a critical exam topic because mistakes here can end your career instantly. First, let us discuss patient privacy and HIPAA. It is a federal crime to post photos of work areas that inadvertently include patient information. You might think you are just taking a harmless selfie in the department to show your friends where you work. However, if the computer screen behind you shows the surgery schedule with patient names, or if a case card in the background has a patient identification label on it, you have violated HIPAA. The consequences for this are severe, including immediate termination and potential legal action against you personally. Second, we must address professional conduct on social media. Facilities often have strict policies against unprofessional content. This includes posting photos of gross or bloody instruments, making fun of patients, or complaining about the facility on platforms like Facebook, TikTok, or Instagram. Posting pictures of soiled instruments is considered damaging to the facility's reputation and is often grounds for immediate termination. The workbook rule you must live by is this: assume anything you post is public and permanent, even if your account is set to private. Screenshots can be taken and shared instantly, meaning there is no such thing as a truly private post. Now, let us review the key sterile processing terms for the exam. These definitions are frequently tested verbatim. First is coaching. Coaching is defined as the process of providing positive reinforcement to encourage proper work practices and negative reinforcement to discourage inappropriate practices. It is important to note that coaching occurs in real time. It is not an annual review or a formal disciplinary hearing. It is immediate feedback given on the job. Distinct from coaching is the concept of mentoring. While coaching is usually task-specific and short-term, mentoring is a formal or informal relationship where an experienced technician helps guide the professional development of a less experienced employee over a longer period. This relates experience to job success and ensures knowledge is passed down effectively. We conclude with the most important concept in the chapter. The text identifies trust as the most important tool in healthcare. Trust is built through ethical behavior, technical competence, and clear communication. Remember that technical skills are only half the job. By communicating clearly, acting ethically, and treating colleagues with respect, you ensure that the patient, who is always our ultimate priority, receives the safest care possible. This concludes our study of Chapter 23.